What is up, guys? Welcome to the channel. As you can see here, I've got myself set up with this UI design that I found by going to the trusted dribble.com. If you guys don't know dribble.com, I highly encourage you to go there if you're looking for some design inspiration. The designer here is named Marina Logunova. I'm gonna send a link, put a link in the comments here in the description, so you guys are free to check out some of her work. I definitely want to give credit where credit's due here, and her design was the inspiration for this video series here. So if you guys like her work, looking for a designer, go ahead and head on over to Dribble and check her out. All right, guys. All right, so what we're looking at here, her design was a pet adoption application. Looks like we've got 3 main screens that we're going to build out over the course of, I hope to make this 3 videos. Alright, so what I've done here is just started a brand new Flutter project and replaced all of the boilerplate code that comes with it and replaced it with just a blue container for the moment. Let's go ahead and rearrange our windows here so we can, hopefully we can fit everything at once here. And that'll help us greatly. Alright, cool. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is we want to change the color of the background. So if you're using a Mac, you've got a built-in color meter that you can use to grab the colors from the design. So I'm going to first do is grab here at the bottom, because you can see it's actually 2 different colors, so we're using a gradient. 48, 96, 96. So I'm just going to introduce that as a color, main color. (48, 96, 96). Okay, let's duplicate that and just say starting color. I'll use my digital color meter to grab that one. 70, 112, 112. Okay, 70, 112, 112. Okay. What we're going to do is replace the color property with decoration and open up a box decoration here with a gradient property. And there's a built-in linear gradient that we're going to use. All you have to do is define the beginning, which will be the top, center, and end, which of course is the bottom center, right? And then you define the colors. And the colors take the form of an array with at least 2 values. Obviously, you can't have a gradient with just 1 color. That wouldn't be a gradient. Okay, so we're going to say starting color and then main color here. And then let's see what we've got. Okay. So to my eye, that looks pretty good for the moment. So the next thing we want to do is, here we have a column with the username, a photo, several rows within it with icons and labels. So let's go ahead and start building that out. Okay, so you see we have our first issue of the day. These yellow underlines are saying that the app, we're not using a scaffold, which is a typical thing to use in a Flutter screen. So a scaffold or a material, and these 2 widgets permit us to inherit the theme data from the app. So we need to add to this container, we need to add a material as its parent. That should get rid of the problem. Okay, so we don't have the problem, but we've also lost our text. So what we could do here is, let's add a safe area and bring the text into view. Because actually what I want to do is I want to use a package to get icons here. So okay. All right. So at this point, what I want to do is to open up the pubspec.yaml, because this is where we're going to go to add some packages. Okay, so now that we're in the pubspec.yaml, let's go ahead and open up the publang website and search for some packages. A package that I use pretty often is Font Awesome. You can see I've already got the autocomplete here. Font Awesome is a package that provides us with a bunch of free icons. So let's go ahead and install that. Click on the installing tab. If you're not familiar with this process, you need to go into the pubspec YAML file with these dependencies. So let's find dependencies and make sure we find the correct one. Cupertino icons. Okay, so just below here, below the Cupertino icon, save this file and then hit packages git, which will automatically launch the packages git in the terminal. So you could have typed it if you want to be extra cool about it, pretend you're a hacker. So once that's finished, what I usually like to do is restart the simulator. And if that takes a long time because my computer is a dinosaur, I might pause the video and come back. So now that we've got the Font Awesome icons, actually what I want to do is let's look again at the website. Let's go to Font Awesome's website, because here they allow you to search for icons that you want to use, because there's a huge amount. There's thousands of icons. So let's see. What if I say paw? Will we get lucky? Yes. Oh, there's actually 1 million paws. So these are pro, so that means that they're not included in the free version, but we have a icon.paw that we're going to use. Great. So let's just leave that kind of open in the background here for the moment. And what we can do now is start typing Font Awesome icons. And we're not going to do add anymore. We're going to use paw. We also want to set the color of this to be white. All right. Any errors? Let's do that. And look at that. Now we've got a paw and the word adoption. So we're making some headway here. The next thing we want to do is, first we want to copy the row. I don't know if that was 5 or 6. Anyway, let's paste that, see what it looks like. And we are really having some issues now because there's no commas. And you need commas in the list of column. So there we go. So we're definitely not leaving it like this. Trust me on that. But this is just to mimic. We have 5. There's 6 here, but that's fine. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we want to add a row for the username, right? Okay. That looks like garbage for the moment, but at least it's there, right? And then the next thing I want to do is I'm just going to copy. Yeah, well, no, I'm going to copy this row, because this row, I'm going to make the settings and logout thing at the bottom here, so I may as well copy this row here. Okay. So now we have an issue, right? Because we have all of these stacked in a column and the spacing is way off, right? And we can also see that the spacing between this menu is different from these ones. Ideally, what we'd like to do is push the top and bottom one all the way towards their edges and keep this in the center. So normally what we would do is for the column main spacing or alignment, main axis alignment, you would say space between. And what you'll see is that's going to push, it's going to be ugly. So that pushes everything away, right? The only problem is that it has the same spacing between every item, and we don't have a difference like we do here. So the way to solve this, what I found is the easiest way, is to create a column inside of a column. So now we're getting closer, right? We have this desired effect of having spacing for these three things considered as like just three separate items, right? We have 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so how are we going to put space in between these? What could we do? We could put sized boxes, right? We could say height of, I don't know, 15. Let's see what that looks like. Just do one of them. Right, maybe a little bit more. You know, one thing we could do instead is maybe use padding. So we can imagine wrapping each one of these rows in a padding, and that'll separate things out. I want to come back to that in 1 second because I want to do something else quickly. And that is to add padding to the outer menu, right? The outer column, because we have a column inside of a column now. And you can see here that we have spacing, vertical spacing, and also a horizontal spacing to get this stuff off the edges. So let's go ahead and do that quickly. Okay, so I want to come back to now the menu that we were just looking at before. What we could do is go ahead and copy and paste this padding and wrap it around each row, each one of these rows to create the desired spacing. But actually what I want to do is something that's a little bit more, allows us to have a more dynamic menu and to only do this one time and not have to redo it over and over again. So in order to do that, here we go again with these comments that are unnecessary. What I want to do is just make a list of strings, and I'm just going to define the menu items. Now that we've got a list of the menu items, I want to create a function that's going to return the menu item. So like we'll say build menu row. And widget is the returning type, right? So we're going to return, basically, it isn't perfect yet, but this row is kind of our, nope, the padding row. The padding row is basically, it's almost where we want it to be. We're going to add some spacing between the icon and the word adoption, but this is almost what we want. So what I want to do is use that. So we'll return that. And instead of a comma at the end, you need a semicolon. So if we could go down to the column within the column, which is, don't get lost here, column within a column, this one. And instead of defining each one of these menu items statically hard-coded, what I want to do instead is go ahead and grab that function that I just built. So delete all of that, right? Even the brackets. So now what we can do is tap into the menu items list or array that I just created. We can turn it into a map. And as you see here, you have a map of int and string that's going to be created from this function, which is to say that all of the menu items that I created will have an integer associated with them, and then that's just the index, the order. So for adoption, that would be 0, and all the way up to 5 for profile. So it's just giving each value in my list an index that we can use. And you'll see why we want to do that in a sec. As map, and grab the entries. And after that, we want to use the map function. Okay, so here, this is just a generic name here. What I want to do here is call build menu row, right? So for each one of the entries in this map that we created, we want to build the menu row. And the important thing at the end here is that the column expects a list to be returned. So we can turn this back into a list conveniently with this toList method. So if I did that right, there you'll see that for each one of my menu items that I added, there were 6 of them, it's building the menu row, but it's building the same menu row. So that's where this gets interesting. And that's why we created this as a map. So if you see here in the build menu row, what we want to do now is to have this be dynamic. What we can do is pass in that index, right? So now we have an error because it's expecting you to pass in the index. And that will be the key, because you can see the key will be the integer, the index value. And now in my function, if we save now, nothing's going to change, right? Because we're not using this index yet. But what we want to do now is instead of passing the word adoption, we'll simply say menu items index. And when we save, that changes. The icon's not changing yet, but the name is. Let's go ahead and add a sized box to put some separation between the icon and the text. 10 maybe that's too much. No, it's actually a little bit more if you look at the design. There's actually a little bit more of space between there. So I'll go ahead and make it 16. That works, that's fine. So now what we could do is define the list of icons. So now we've created a list of icons. Let's see how they look. Instead of using paw each time, we're going to say icons with index and okay. Well, that's looking pretty good, isn't it? The next thing that we want to look at here is the color, right? The color, we need to be able to select these menu items, right? And only one of them should be this full color white. So here what we're working with is a stateless widget, and this, for the first time, I think I would recommend that we go ahead and create a new file. So let's go ahead and do that. And we'll call this menu screen.dart. And actually what I want is a stateful widget, so we can keep track of which menu item we've selected. So don't forget to import material, right? And then we'll go back to the main screen, and we want to just copy, basically cut this whole thing. While we're in here, let's go ahead and change show checked mode banner. Let's get rid of the banner in the corner of our app that says debug. And then also for primary color, I want to use the main color. Okay. Have we got an error? Home, yes. So now we need to replace this with the menu screen. Okay, if we've done everything right, nothing should change. And looks like nothing has changed, which is good. So let's go back in here, and what I was just getting to before was we need to add an int that is the selected menu index. And we can initialize that with a 0 because we'll just expect adoption to be highlighted first. And then what we want to do is for each one of these menu rows, this has to be a button now. So there's a few ways to do this. What we could do is turn this into an inkwell, and that has an accessible property called onTap. If you just create an anonymous function here and you say set state, this is important. You need to have set state in order to change what we're going to do is change the value of this property. And since it's the state, you call set state to do that. So we'll say set state and we'll say selected menu index is equal to the index. So for each one of these, they have their index property stored here. And then we'll set that. And then if we look at the colors, what we're going to use is the ternary operator and say selected menu index is equal to index. And this is like a question, right? It's saying, is that equal? Question mark. And if it is, then we want colors dot white. And if it's not, what we're going to do is we're still going to use colors dot white, but we're just going to change the opacity. So dot with opacity, let's just cut it in half and see what that looks like. Okay, so that looks pretty close to what they've got in the design, or what she's defined in her design. But we also have to do this for the icons color, right? So selected menu index, is it equal to index? If it's yes, colors dot white. If it's not, colors dot white dot with opacity of 0.5. Cool. And just a test, when you click on it, it changes, right? So the set state is working, everything seems to be working as we would like. Let's deal with this real quick, the padding between here. Next thing is, let's deal with the profile, right? So here we need to have this active status and the profile name in a column. So the next thing is this column, we want the Ryan and active status to be aligned left justified. So that's actually cross-axis. So when you're building columns and rows, you have main axis alignment and cross-axis alignment. Since it's a column and we're actually dealing with its justification across the main axis, we're going to use cross-axis alignment. I hope that made sense. You can imagine a column, its main axis is y, the y direction, up and down. So we're dealing with the x direction here. Okay, cool, so that worked. And then in between the avatar and the column, I want to put some space there. Sized box with a width of, I will start out with 16. That looks about right. Okay, so I might pause the video here for a sec. I want to find a photo that we can put in here, but we're almost done. What we can do quickly is gray this out actually before I pause the video. Let's go ahead and just make that with the opacity of 0.5 like the others. Okay. And the icon, shoot. Okay. So yeah, like I said, I'm going to pause the video here. I'm going to find maybe a photo of me, something that's I can use here, and also it's going to be useful for this part of the app too. I might also actually, well, I'm going to take the time to actually search for some cat photos so we can have those ready for next time. All right, and we're back, guys. In the meantime, I was able to find a photo of me and a photo of a cat that we're going to be able to use for the next screen. But I'm going to leave that for a little surprise for the next video. The cute, adorable Sola awaits you. This is my cliffhanger that will force you, against your will, to watch the next video. Anyways, this video has been actually a little bit longer than I was hoping, and that's okay. And for that reason, I've sort of separated out the adding of the images into the assets into its own separate how-to video, which I think could be useful for other people who just want to know how to add assets to their Flutter app. So feel free to check that out on the channel. Once I learn how to, I'll add a link to that. Here, we're almost finished here. The only thing I wanted to change was maybe the font weight of the menu items. I think it's not quite bold. It's a little semi-bold. And I know this is being pretty nitpicky. Let's just check out what 500 looks like. Yeah, I prefer 600. This is being extremely nitpicky, I'm aware. And the settings logout also, that has to be changed. So let's go ahead and make that W600 for the settings. There we go. Actually, I want to add a couple more spaces here too. And yeah, maybe one more space. Really getting down into the weeds here. Yeah, otherwise I would say that we can call this screen complete. It resembles pretty closely the original design. It's always free for you guys to consider other strategies. If you want to share down in the comments, I'd love to see suggestions that you guys had, other ways to achieve this same look that we've got here. But otherwise, I'm pretty happy with what we've got. Please, this is my new YouTube channel, my first video I've ever made, so feel free to click subscribe or click like to help me get started here. If you like the content, come back for the next video. All right, thanks guys.